Hey there, my gorgeous friends on internet. I am back on your internet screen and we will be continuing the topic that we left in our previous video. So if you missed to check the video, click on the I button above and you'll be able to see that. So as we discussed before, we are going to create a login page using Bootstrap 5 and also have our hands on with the new features. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so like I said, if you want to start working with Bootstrap 5, you can go to v5.getbootstrap.com, and just like that with version 4, you can include the CDN if you want to get started. You can grab the CSS files here, you have the JavaScript file, and then you have the pop-up for tooltips, which is just a tiny tooltip library. So you can do that, but you can't really customize much that way. So you could either download the source files or you could use npm, which is what we are going to do. And it's important to mention that what I'm doing here with npm, you can set up the same workflow with bootstrap 5 as well. It's not anything particular to version 5. We are just going to do it by using version 5, and I'll show you, for instance, the utility API and stuff like that. So I'm going to jump to VS Code, and I just have this folder, and you do need Node.js installed because I'll be using npm, which is a node package manager. So we want to first initialize with a package.json. So npm init -y will do that. Okay, and then we want to install Bootstrap 5. So we can do that with npm install Bootstrap. And now you can do @next, and that will give you the latest version. However, you might be watching this at the time where it's already a different version. So if you want the same version that I am using, it's 5.0.0 dash alpha 1. Okay, so that will be get installed. We look at our package JSON, so you can see that we have Bootstrap 5 installed, and now you can also install Bootstrap icons with npm. So if we do npm install bootstrap dash icons, that will install that. And if you look in node modules, you'll see all these svg icons that you can use. And if you look at our bootstrap folder, we have the dist folder, which is our compiled css and also javascript. We also have the minified JS, which we can include in our HTML, and then we have our SASS folder, which is what we are interested in right now. So we have the main bootstrap SCSS file. This is what we want to include in our main SASS files. So we'll get that set up, and this is just includes everything else. Basically, you also have the variable files here. You can see some of the new colors, new shades, and you don't want to edit anything directly here, because if you upgrade bootstrap or update it, it's going to get overwritten. So you want to create your own variable file, and we'll get into that. So let's close that up and just minimize this. Now, to set up our workflow with SASS, you need a SASS compiler, which I would highly recommend is Live SASS compiler. If you are using VS Code, it's just as easy as clicking this Watch SASS button down here right now. So I do have some settings that I want to show you before I get started. So if I go to my settings, that is Control plus comma, I search for Live SASS compiler, and I actually want to change my settings in my settings.json file. So these are the settings that I use, that this right here. So we have the live SASS compiled settings.formats, and inside this object we have the formats, which is compressed. So it will be minified when this SASS is compiled to CSS. It will be .css extension, and then it's going to get be saved in a folder called CSS. If you don't add a save path, it's just going to get added to the SASS folder. So if you want to just copy these settings, you can. And if you already use this extension, I'm sure you already have your own stuff set up. So I'm going to create a folder called scss, and here we are going to create a file called main.scss, and we want to use bootstrap. So what we want to do here is just import. So we can go one level back into node modules, and then we want bootstrap scss, and then we'll go ahead and save this. And now what we can do is just click down here where it says watch SASS. It's going to compile into CSS. Okay, so it automatically creates a CSS folder with main.css, which then includes all of the bootstrap. So, all right, that's all we have to include in our HTML. So let's create our index.html file. and just call this login, and then let's just add link tag here. It's going to css and main.css, and then I'm going to going down here, and in the body I'll need to add some few bootstrap classes. So they are d hyphen flex, which will just display as flex, and text center, and then I want to have a secondary color as my background. So I'm going to add the bg secondary, and these are all bootstrap 4 classes as well. So nothing new, but let's save this, and then I'm going to open this with live server, and you can see that we have our secondary background color, we have our channel name. Now I want to change the value of secondary. I don't want to use this color as my background, and this is where customization comes in. So we can go in our main.scss, and again we don't want to edit our variable files directly. We want to just add our own in our separate file. So you could either create a new file or just put them in here. So let's change the variable of secondary to I'm going to change it to just a light gray, so e7 e7 e7. And now if I go ahead and save that and we go back, now you can see that we have a light gray background. So this is how we can get our workflow set up to really customize Bootstrap. Now as far as the HTML goes, let's use an example of icon. So I want to actually put SVG icon on so one of our Bootstrap icon logos at the top of the login form. Let me create a form, and inside the form I'll give the class of form login, and let's get rid of this action. So inside this form I'm going to put an image tag. So these are the SVG icons. You can use them in multiple ways. In fact, if you go and take a look in docs, it will show you a ton of different ways you can use them. So I'm just going to use the SVG icon directly. So I want to go in my node modules, then in Bootstrap icons, and then we have to find our bootstrap.svg icon, and I just want to add a width of 72 and a height of 72, and then I would just want to add a class of MB4, which is the margin bottom utility. Okay, so we'll save that. We should now see that bootstrap icon. Okay, so we have it now. There's some custom styles that I would like to add. So if you want to do that, you could put them right in your main.scss file. What I'm going to do is create a new file. So here called underscore style.scss, and the first thing that I want to do in this custom style sheet is just set the HTML and body to the height of 100%, because I want everything aligned in the middle horizontally and vertically as well. Okay, so and then you remember we gave a form login class to our form. So I'm going to set the width of 100% and set the max width to 330 pixels, and set the padding to be 50 pixels, and let's set the margin to auto so that it's aligned in the middle. Okay, so if we go ahead and save, and then we go to our main.scss file, we should be able to just import the style, and since it's an underscore file, it's not going to get compiled into a new style.scss file. It's just going to be imported in our main.scss file. So if we take a look, it's right in the middle. So if for the rest of the HTML, I think what I'll do is just paste it in, because I don't really want to just type a bunch of HTML and waste yours and my time as well. So I'm going to grab that and paste it in into our index right under the image. So what we have is just an h1, or using a couple of classes here, changing the font weight to normal. It's an h1 but formatted as an h3 label. So we use SR only because it's only visible on screen readers input. So we have our email input. We are using margin bottom 2 to give a margin bottom of 2 pixels according to the utility. We have a password input, so and also some checkboxes, the remember me checkbox, and these are just standard bootstrap classes. We are using btn primary, although I do want to change the primary color variable, but let's save this and take a look. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And now if you want to change some stuff, like I want to change the primary color of everything, not just the button, because the primary color just in general. So I don't want any rounded corners, I want to change that as well. So what I would do is go into my main.css file and let's set its primary variable. So I'm actually going to set it to a bootstrap purple, which is 401 f7c. And then for the border radius, we want to set it to 0, so border radius to 0. And then we also want anything that has the class of sm or lg to be 0 as well. So if we save that, now we can see that we have sharp corners on the inputs and on the button. So anything that you want to change, you want to customize, you can just change the variables or add the variables. Now I want to show you how we can use the utility API. So if we look in our node modules, bootstrap, SCSS, and we look in our utilities, so we can see this API here. We need to have this utilities default, and then we use map merge, and we can add any utility we want. So I'm going to kind of mimic the padding utility. So if I search for padding, you'll see there we are using the property padding. The class is p, and for the variables we are using spacer variables, which is actually in variables files. So what I'd like to do is create an input padding utility, because if I use the padding utility in on my input, so if I go into my email and I put and I do p dash let's say p dash 2, that's not even going to change it because it's a little bit lesser than the standard padding. And if I go one level up, so p dash 3, it's too big. So I want to create a utility that gives me the amount of padding that I want to use on my inputs, and it looks similar throughout my website. So let's get rid of that. And what we want to do is go into our main.scss again, and we don't want to touch the bootstrap files, and you could either create a new file or just put it in here. And just like I showed you in the bootstrap in the utilities file, we want to use map merge. So we need to set utilities and exclamation default, and then we want to set utilities and use the variable map merge. So it gives these variables, so you can put them in variables, but I'm just going to do it directly. So map merge, in here we are going to open up a set of parentheses, and then it's important that you need to put the comma and then add the utilities variable here. So this should be the correct syntax. So this is the common syntax used for creating any type of utility you want. So this is the base. The content within the map merge might change, but this is the important and basic thing that always comes if you create a new utility or if you overwrite a previously written one. So we want one called input padding. So this is just a name, this can be anything, and we want to set that to the so we want to use the padding property. So and then putting the parenthesis we want to use, so just padding, and then we want the class that we want to use in our HTML. So the class I'm going to call is IP, so input padding, so IP is the acronym. So we could be able to do like IP-1 or IP-2 and so on. And then we want our values, so values are going to be put in parentheses, and let's say like 0, so 0 will be 0. And let's do 1 will be 0.3 RAM. You can use pixels, but it's on you, you can use any value you wish. So let's say that we have 2 to be 0.5 RAM, uh, 3 to 0.7, and we give 4 as 0.9 RAM, and let's do 5, that will be 1 RAM. Okay, so those are our values. So hopefully this is clear, and you could of course go after this input padding, and you could put another utility if you want. So you can also edit the ones that are already there. So we have a input utility that is mb hyphen for margin hyphen 4 or margin hyphen 2. So like if you want a margin hyphen 10, depending on your theme, so you can add or remove values from it and modify it, so it will be overwritten. And if the bootstrap is upgraded, you still will be having the values that you created. So this is the power that Bootstrap 5 is building right now. Although it's late, but it's good that Bootstrap 5 is catching up. So now I'm going into my HTML, and I should be able to add IP dash let's do dash 2, which is I don't believe will be going to add any padding because it's smaller than the default padding. But if we do IP dash 3 now, you can see the email has more padding than the password, and this is what I actually wanted. So bigger than p-2 and smaller than p-3. So this is the power and the customizability, the customization that we are getting in Bootstrap 5. So and if you want to add it even bigger, so you can do ip-4, and now you can see that the padding is even bigger. So if I open my dev tools and check the email input field, you can see that we have the class of IP-4 and a padding of 0.9 RAM. Okay, so I'm just going to change that back to IP-3, and I'm also going to add it onto our password as well. So things look similar. So IP-3, and then this gives me the padding that I want for inputs. Now, one thing that I didn't do for this project is include the JavaScript because we didn't have any work with JavaScript right now. So, if you want to do that, I mean, you could just grab the CDN, you could grab it from v5.getbootstrap.com, or you can include it from our node modules. So, if we go down here in our index.html and do script source, and we can go in our node modules, then bootstrap inside dist, and then bootstrap.min.js. So we included. That's it, guys. I don't want to go too far into this because like I said, it's still in alpha 1. So once we get past this stage, that is once we get past alpha 1, I'll go ahead and create a crash course for you guys. So we'll create a theme or sort of something like more in depth together. So because things are still going to be added or removed along the way, and that's it for today's video. Hopefully you like the video, and make sure you like the video and subscribe the channel if you haven't, and also follow me on Instagram because I post some good content, tips and tricks, small tutorial videos on daily basis or twice once in 2 days. So that's it for today's video, and also I'll be back soon with a new video. Till then, peace out.